So, Pastor James, not for you at Saron Lutheran Church, but when you were like a kid growing up in church, what happened? What was it like when a new pastor came to your congregation?
Well, it's always a mix. You get a lot of people who are excited, and that excitement usually lasts for a while, but eventually, what you find out is uh, everything feels up in the air. I remember in college, actually, my pastor took a new call, and I had a close relationship with the pastor. I looked to her as a mentor, and I was like, well, where do I stand now? And as I've gotten older and been in the pastor's shoes, I've realized that you've got a whole bunch of people at any time of transition that are asking, how's this person going to do things? Where do I fit in now? So it can be both a time of joy, but also a time of change and anxiety and uncertainty.
Yeah, and I mean, to be transparent, the part of the reason I'm asking that question is because we just talked about Joseph and how Joseph fed his family and brought them into Egypt. And they live, well, I don't think we said this last week, but they live in the land of Goshen. And
Yep.
then
Not Indiana.
not Goshen, Indiana.
Yep.
Goshen,
Different one.
the ancient part of actually the very fertile part of the land of Egypt,
Right.
down there by the Nile Delta, and or up there by the Nile Delta,
Yes.
and that's how the book of Genesis ends. But the very next book, the book of Exodus, just a couple verses in, because Joseph's buddy, his boss, the person who put him in charge, was the king Pharaoh.
He's got a good thing going on with that Pharaoh. Sweetheart
Oh
deal.
man, they're buddies. They trust each other. The Pharaoh is protecting Joseph and his family. Now a new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. And
Yep.
I've got to imagine that that was unsettling to the Israelites.
And sadly, in this case, it turned out that anyone who felt uncertainty or anxiety, they were exactly right.
Was absolutely correct. Yeah,
Uh,
because it only takes a couple more verses before the oppressive policies of the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh, are in full effect. And by oppressive, I mean murderous.
right. Right. Yeah. So I don't. Uh, we're not necessarily going to focus on that part today because we want to talk about that new king bit. So we talked about pastoral transition, and Pastor Chris, I'm going to be honest. One that occurs to me is I've voted in enough elections to be on the losing side of several of them at this point. And I think the morning after, and then especially in January when the new president takes the oath, you're hoping for the best, and I always try to support whoever it is. Uh, but you wonder how things are going to change. And I think this is especially true for discrete minority groups who may question whether the new president, whoever it is, will protect their rights and interests. Um, there can be a whole lot of anxiety. And so how does the book of Exodus tell us to go about managing when political circumstances seem to be in flux around you?
I mean, as this story continues, they continue in their lives. They continue to work. They continue to live, even when their living conditions are restricted.
Yeah, I think the Exodus, you get the story of the midwives who that Pharaoh's plan is to send all the baby boys down the Nile, and they pluck them out. What were their names again? You remember their names? Puah.
Pua and Shipra.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Who are particularly heroic. This is how Moses gets saved out of a basket, or the Hebrew word is the same as for ark, that he said. But
Pua and Shipra looked the king in the eye and lied to him.
that's
It's
that's that's
great.
that's right. But what I want to say is the Bible, it is almost entirely written from the perspective of bad political circumstances. So anything anyone feels like they're going through, whether it's right now or if it was a few years ago or whoever knows what comes next, uh, the Bible's not a stranger to that. And the emphasis is always no matter what's going on. there's always a role you can play to love your neighbor, to work together for the common good. Um, and I think the one thing it's against is you don't see the midwives doom scrolling. You don't see them sitting alone fretting. You know, those feelings may be okay now and then. I'm sure they felt them, but I think it's a story of how we can always take steps for our neighbors and to make the place we live a better place, no matter who the new king is.
And I know we keep doing this at the end of every one of these episodes, but it's absolutely true that there is a king who is a good king. There is only one king, in fact, who is a totally good king. And he lived through some bad kings, Herod and Pilate. But he told us, yeah, love your neighbor and pray for those who persecute you. So that's the one we worship, and that's where I want to. And I'm sorry we didn't pregame this, but I do want to put a plug in for the political situation. Are the realities of our world matter, but they are not God. Only God is God, and in Jesus we have a true King who will never leave us or forsake us.